A bone-dry wind rattled the prayer flags atop Sky Valley's rocky pass as Ilara Swift guided her horse, Sable, down the narrow trail at first light. The terraces that once brimmed with barley and millet now resembled cracked mosaics of sun-baked clay, and the irrigation channels lay silent, hollowed of water. Ilara's boots crunched on parched earth scattered with brittle stalks of last season's harvest. Each step carried the weight of the valley's despair. At the valley floor, she tethered Sable beneath a lone pomegranate tree, its fruit still withered from weeks without rain. Across the cracked courtyard of the central plaza, a somber procession of villagers gathered, weathered farmers in faded robes, children with hollow cheeks, and the stoic council elders seated beneath an ancient stone arch. Elder Mira, her silver braid entwined with eagle feathers, rose from her seat and beckoned Ilara forward with a solemn nod. Ilara Swift of the Highland clans, Mira intoned in the valley's old tongue, her voice echoing against sun-bleached stones. You come bearing the mark of the eagle. Yet the eagles have fled these skies, and our fields have failed. What hope do you bring to our suffering people? Ilara bowed, unshouldering her leather satchel. Sunlight glinted off the polished hawthorn bell dangling at her hip, the calling bell of generations of eagle whisperers. From her satchel she produced a carved wooden box etched with soaring eagle glyphs. With steady fingers, she opened it to reveal a single, iridescent eagle feather, plucked, with the bird's consent, from her own mount's wing during its coming-of-age trial. The feather shimmered with bronze and gold in the morning light. This feather, Ilara began, her voice both soft and resolute, speaks of trust forged between handler and eagle. I offer it now as a pledge. If you allow me passage, I will seek the fountain of winds, where sky and earth once met in harmony, and awaken the rains by rekindling the bond between your people and the golden eagles. She lifted the feather high, letting the breeze catch its barbs, and felt a hush fall over the crowd. Villagers exchanged anxious glances. A dry cough rattled from a weathered farmer's throat. A young girl tucked a faded prayer flag into her belt, eyes bright with cautious hope. After a breath-long pause, Elder Mira stepped forward. She took the feather, ran its quill gently between thumb and forefinger, then wove it into the sash at her waist, a symbol that Ilara's pledge had been accepted. Follow the sky path at dawn, Mira declared, and may your courage match the eagle's flight. But know this, eagle whisperer, the valley tests all who enter. Only those true of heart may discover the hidden spring. As the villagers dispersed, Ilara stood alone in the drying plaza, the golden feather tucked against her chest. She knelt and pressed her hand into the cracked earth, feeling its heat through her glove. Above, a lone golden eagle cried from the cliffs, a clear, resonant call that stirred something deep within her. Ilara rose, her eyes fixed on the steep goat trail winding up Eagle's Ridge. Destiny awaited at dawn, wings of hope poised to bridge sky and stone, and a promise that the parched valley might breathe anew. Before dawn's first pale glow, Ilara strapped her leather satchel across her back and slung Kithara's falconry hood on her belt. The cold mountain air stung her cheeks as she and a small band of Erawan youths crested the ragged lip of Eagle's Ridge. Below them, Sky Valley's terraced fields stretched like cracked steps down to the canyon floor, wreathed in swirling mist. Ilara breathed deeply, tasting juniper on the wind and feeling the valley's silent plea tug at her heart. On the ridge's eastern face, a series of natural ledges, each no wider than a handspan, jutted from the granite like sturdy balconies. Legend held that eagle nests clung to these shelves for centuries. Ilara motioned for the youths to spread out and remain perfectly still. Each carried a slender branch with salted venison strips and bowls of juniper berries, the ancient offering of peace between human and eagle. Hour by hour, the sky lightened to a wash of rose and lavender, yet the cliffs remained silent. Then, as the sun's first rays danced across the mist, a distant cree-cree, the cry of a golden eagle, echoed through the chasm. Ilara's pulse quickened. She signaled the youths, who arranged the venison in a neat circle on a flat ledge 15 meters above the path. Ilara waited until a second cry rose high above. A juvenile eagle, its feathers mottled with pale gold and chocolate browns, hovered on an invisible thermal. the eaglet alighted softly at the platter's edge, talons clicking on rock. Its head swiveled, each amber eye reflecting cautious hunger. Ilara crouched low, unbuttoned her falconry hood, and spoke in the old Arawan tongue, a gentle cadence learned from childhood lullabies. Child of wind, eat and learn that our hands are kind. She extended a gloved fist, its leather smooth beneath the bird's keen gaze. Tentatively, the eaglet pecked at a strip of venison, then inhaled a juniper berry, its nostrils flaring. Ilara remained still, every bone in her body attuned to the bird's fragile trust. When the eaglet nudged her glove with its beak, she knew the bond had begun. Drawing a slender jess from her satchel, Ilara offered its leather loop. The eaglet hopped onto her arm, and Ilara guided the jess gently around its ankle, careful not to startle it. Below, the Arawan youths let out a single, unified drumbeat, a pulse of celebration that rolled across the cliffs. The young eagle fluffed its nascent plumes as if honoring the rhythm. Ilara murmured gratitude, "Welcome, Carrie. Together, we will call the skies back to life." Clasping the other end of Carrie's jess, she turned and descended the ridge, the fledgling perched confidently upon her gauntlet. Two souls joined on a path that would lead Sky Valley toward renewal. The sun stood high over Sky Valley as Ilara, Carrie perched securely on her left gauntlet and Zephyr on her right, set out for the shattered canyon. What had once been a narrow mountain trail was now a chaotic maze of collapsed boulders and fallen pines, evidence of a recent landslide that had cleaved the canyon floor like a wound in the earth. Dust motes danced in the golden light, and each breath carried the sharp tang of crushed granite and pine resin. Ilara tested each foothold before committing her weight, crampons biting into the rough stone. Below her, Carrie and Zephyr chirped softly, their youthful excitement tempered by caution. She spoke to them in low whistles, a language of trust they had already learned. When the path narrowed to a slab no wider than a hoofprint, she extended her arms, letting the eaglets hop forward one at a time onto smaller ledges. Zephyr's talons scrabbled for purchase, then gripped steady, while Carrie flapped once to steady her balance before settling. At the canyon's heart, Ilara faced the greatest gap, a yawning chasm 50 meters across, bridged only by a fallen cedar trunk slick with moss. The roar of a hidden stream echoed below, its water frothing against unseen rocks. Ilara steadied her racing heart in motion for the eaglets to fly. With a powerful leap, Carrie caught the wind current, wings beating in swift arcs as she hovered across to the far ledge. Zephyr followed, each wing beat a testament to their fledgling strength and to the bond that guided them. Once the eaglets were safe, Ilara inched onto the log, arms outstretched, feeling the G-forces of wind swirl around her. Halfway across, the cedar shifted with a subtle crack, her breath caught in her throat. But she pressed on, muscles coiling and releasing in precise rhythm, until solid rock beckoned her onward. She dropped to her knees, gratitude flooding her senses as she scooped up the eaglets and pressed them close. Beyond the treacherous span lay a hidden grotto where a cool spring trickled into a jade-green pool. Moss-draped stones formed a natural basin ringed with maidenhair ferns and alpine lilies, Sky Valley's long-lost oasis. Ilara knelt at the water's edge, cupped her hands to the spring, and let the icy liquid swirl through her fingers. Carrie and Zephyr landed beside her, wings drying in the gentle breeze. Ilara whispered, "Here, we rest and renew. Tomorrow, we fly higher still." In that sheltered refuge, the promise of the Fountain of Winds felt within reach. As the valley's heartbeat pulsed in the water's murmurs, Ilara knew the hardest trials lay ahead, but with Carrie and Zephyr by her side, she would guide Sky Valley back to life. Ilara and the two eaglets climbed the final rocky spur as the sun reached its zenith, revealing a hidden amphitheater of winds hewn into the cliffs. Below them lay a crystal-clear pool fed by a slender spring, its water so pure it shimmered like liquid glass against the moss-draped stones. Ilara knelt at the water's edge and cupped the cool liquid in her palms, letting its breath-like murmur flow between her fingers. She drew her hawthorn bell from her satchel and rang it 3 clear, resonant notes that rippled across the stony walls. In response, Carrie and Zephyr, perched on a ledge above, unfurled their young wings and leapt into the rising thermals, spiraling upward in perfect unison. As the eaglets wheeled through the air, their wing beats stirred mist from the pool into silvery tendrils that danced around the amphitheater. Ilara raised her arms and called softly in the ancient valley tongue, summoning the winds to carry her plea. Moments later, distant mutterings of thunder rolled through the cliffs, and overhead the gathering mist coalesced into heavy gray clouds. Below, far across the parched terraces of Sky Valley, the first gentle drops of rain began to fall, soaking the cracked earth and reviving the furrows. Ilara stood at the pool's rim, rain streaming down her face, and watched the eaglets dive through the fine curtain of water as if celebrating the valley's renewed promise. When the storm settled into a steady shower, Ilara scooped up a handful of water from the spring and let it trickle back into the pool, a silent offering of thanks. Kiri and Zephyr landed beside her, feathers glistening with raindrops, their young eyes bright with exhilaration. Together, Handler and birds paused in the soft patter of rain, the landscape around them humming with the valley's grateful sigh. In that moment, the ancient covenant between earth and sky was reborn, carried on feathered wings in the cleansing waters of the Fountain of Winds. By the time the harvest moon rose high over Sky Valley, every terrace and furrow had drunk deep of the rains summoned at the Fountain of Winds. Ilara trudged down the winding path from the amphitheater with Kiri and Zephyr perched contentedly on her shoulders, their feathers still flecked with raindrops. Below, the valley lay lush and shimmering, new green shoots of barley carpeted the once barren slopes, and the irrigation channels gurgled with life-filled water. The air smelled of wet earth and wildflowers stirred by gentle breezes. Ilara entered the plaza to find the villagers already at work. Women in brightly dyed tunics wove fresh prayer flags into the rafters of the stone archway, each panel painted with swirling eagle motifs and symbols of rain. Children splashed in puddles at the fountain's base, their laughter echoing against the sun-bleached walls. Farmers hefted buckets of clear spring water to their fields, murmuring prayers of thanks as they guided the flow back into the thirsty soil. Elder Mira stood at the center of it all, her silver braid wrapped with fresh eagle down and daisies, directing the celebration with luminous eyes. Row by row, the villagers approached Ilara and her feathered companions, offering gifts of fruit and painted stones, tokens of gratitude for the rain and the return of the eagles. A young girl pressed a woven basket of wild strawberries into Ilara's hands, a father laid a carved wooden yoke inscribed with the valley's spiral symbol at her feet. Ilara knelt to receive each gift, her heart swelling as she felt the valley's renewed heartbeat in every smile and tear. As twilight deepened, torches were lit and placed along the perimeter of the plaza, their flickering flames dancing in the cool night air. A long table of polished cedar was set beneath the archway, laden with steaming flatbreads, honey-glazed root vegetables, and braised mountain goat seasoned with rosemary and thyme. Smoke spiraled toward the indigo sky as villagers gathered on woven mats, dipping bread into fragrant broths and raising mugs of spiced mead in a single, harmonious toast. Elder Mira rose to speak, her voice steady but warm. Tonight, we honor the Eagle Whisperer, who bridged sky and earth to lift our valley from despair. May her courage guide our children, and may the eagles forever ride the winds above our fields. The crowd fell silent, and Ilara stood, the moonlight glinting off Kiri's crest and Zephyr's wing bars. She stepped forward, voice clear. It was the bond of trust with the spring, the wind, and your hearts that brought life back to this land. May we keep that bond unbroken, for as long as these eagles soar. At that moment, two golden silhouettes arced overhead, Kiri and Zephyr, their wings spread wide in a silent benediction. Gasps and cheers erupted from below. The eagles circled once more before spiraling into the darkness above Eagle's Ridge, leaving behind only the hush of awe. As the feast continued, Ilara slipped away to the Fountain of Winds one last time. She knelt by the pool's edge, scooping up a handful of the crystal water and letting it slip back into the ripple. The moon's reflection trembled with each drop. She whispered her final blessing, may feather and fur, stone and stream, remain bound in promise. Rising, she turned toward the torchlit plaza, where laughter and music rose like an open sky. In the warm glow of torchlight and moonlight, Sky Valley's people and their eagles danced together, guardians of a land reborn, each heartbeat carried on wings of destiny.